Murdoch!
I need to leave now.
If you grab me like that again, I'll punch you so hard you see.
Why do we love broken characters? What attracts us to House, Cersei Lannister, Homelander?
Alright! You f***ing
I think I know, but it's kind of complicated. Broken, complex characters challenge our expectations and assumptions. They defy traditional archetypes, subvert expectations, and surprise us with their choices. It's really hard to explain why they do what they do, or bucket them into any type of category. Them being unpredictable makes for exciting, engaging TV. We want to learn what makes them tick, and of course we root for them, even when we know they're making terrible choices.
I will allow you to throw the first punch.
But most importantly, we see ourselves in broken characters. We understand their flaws and vulnerabilities. We know what it's like to struggle with demons, deal with trauma, to feel alone. When these characters overcome these adversities, we get really inspired. Now, when we talk about anti-heroes, or broken characters, or legit actual psychopaths, like Homelander, we see a little bit less of ourselves in him, hopefully. But Jessica Jones, for example, is a much more relatable character. She struggles to get through her day-to-day, like so many of us do. She feels real, which is both a testament to Krysten Ritter's excellent performance and the fantastic writing and directing of the show. The first season of Jessica Jones is one of the best first seasons of any TV show I've personally seen in a decade. It takes a subtle approach to darker topics and themes, while putting a tragic, heroic character front and center, and making it a superhero show that never really feels like one. Jessica Jones doesn't focus on how it's different from the other MCU content that came before it, or the fact that it was the first female-led MCU project. It's just a great story, with great characters, great villains, and great pacing. Most critics wouldn't consider Jessica Jones the greatest show, or even the greatest superhero show. The first season is phenomenal, but seasons 2 and 3 don't carry the same weight. The show didn't do anything incredibly remarkable or original, but was refreshing and unique. Krysten kills this role and really makes it her own by balancing dark humor, vulnerability, and strength. She brings a complex but intimidating feel to Jessica. Plus, that jacket is sick!
That is the fucking drip!
The show's focus on character development, exploration of complex themes, and a kind of bleak, morose tone sets it apart from most things Marvel had done. Also, the intro credits to the show has to be like the best introduction into a show ever. The visuals, the style, the music. I mean, listen to this solo. The superhero powers that we see on screen too, like super strength, durability, and mind control, all perfectly play into a believable narrative that's set up by the show. We don't need overly done CGI or epic battles, WandaVision, to believe this story and be drawn in. And for that reason, Jessica Jones feels more grounded. It's an intense, gritty noir detective story, after all. Also, the cast is kind of stacked. You got Jerry Hogarth, played by the powerful Carrie-Anne Moss, Kilgrave, played by the amazing David Tennant, and characters like Trish, Malcolm, Luke Cage, and the other Defenders. Acting all around in this show is on point. And while all the performances are incredible, especially Krysten Ritter, I have to re-shout out David Tennant one more time. His performance on this show elevates it. He has incredible chemistry with Ritter, and is honestly the most terrifying villain I've probably ever seen on a television show.
Everybody quiet!
Jessica Jones also really has this kind of lonely feel to it, especially in the first season. Half the show is just Jessica riding around in cabs, walking the street, doing PI work, and drinking alone. It has a very distinct style to it, like a sort of Blade Runner-y feel. Slap a black and white filter on this show, and add an awful Harrison Ford voiceover, and you're set.
I don't know why he saved my life. All he'd wanted were the same answers the rest of us want.
Welcome back to another edition in our search for the greatest TV character of all time. This is currently character number 5, and we've now touched several different genres and shows. You can check my channel for the other 4 characters whenever you'd like. I know coming soon we're going to go back a bit more into the past and pull some characters from some classic shows. But for now, it's been really satisfying to knock out some great characters of more recent TV. We're gonna go back soon and pull characters from shows like MASH and Frasier. I mean, don't you want to know who has more bodily kinesthetic intelligence? Jessica Jones or Frasier Crane?
UN interpreter. Oh, good Lord.
Ironically enough, Kristen Ritter auditioned for the role of Trish, but ended up getting the main part instead. We cannot imagine the show any other way now. So let's ask the question. Who is Jessica Jones? And why might she be the greatest TV character ever? Jessica's place of birth or exact age are never explicitly given in the show, so we don't have all the details of her upbringing. We can assume she was probably born in the mid-1980s, which would put her roughly in her early to mid-30s in the show. She's a longtime resident of New York City, although we know she hasn't lived there her whole life. Before the events of the show, Jessica was a former superhero who had given up her unique crime-fighting life and became a private investigator. But as the first season and show progress, we learn a lot about Jessica's past, which is filled with pain, trauma, and misery. As a teenager, Jessica was involved in a car accident that killed her parents and brother and left her in a brief coma. She emerged from the coma with superhuman abilities after IGH, a shady pharmaceutical company, experimented on her. Jessica was eventually adopted by Dorothy Walker and her daughter Trish, a famous former child actor, with whom she became close friends, sisters even. Jessica briefly became a superhero known as Jewel, but her time in the spotlight was cut short when she was captured by the villainous Kilgrave. Kilgrave had the power to pretty much manipulate and control people to do whatever he wanted.
Dad, this isn't a library.
Pick up that coffee. Throw it in your face.
That's cold-blooded.
And he used this power to force Jessica to do his bidding. He subjected her to physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And after she broke free, Jessica struggled with PTSD, addiction, alcoholism, and guilt over all the things she was forced to do. Really, the show focuses on Jessica's struggles with trauma, addiction, and isolation as she takes on cases and confronts villains. Along the way, she must confront a number of powerful and dangerous individuals, and the mysterious organization IGH, which played a role in her past. Rewatching Jessica Jones more recently hits really different. The show didn't do a lot of world building, and it wasn't constantly referencing his other work. The self-contained aspects of this story really make it shine. So, Jessica is a superhero. That's a first for the channel. What are her powers? We know that she has super strength and at least some form of increased durability.
I have a gun on her, for Christ's sake, Carlo.
You shoot at me, I'll pull the bullet out of my ruined jacket and shove it up your...
She can jump really high, and apparently fly. Although, listen to Kristen explain it.
And she can fly.
Isn't she really jumping? Isn't it more of a hard jump?
Yeah, it's more like big jumping or guided falling, she calls it.
I see.
So she doesn't fly that often because when she does it, she gets injured.
She also has some sort of built-up resistance to mind control. Her being a pseudo-Captain America-esque type of hero makes most situations or confrontations effortless. She's not afraid of walking down a dark alley at night, like you or I might be, or even being jumped by multiple people at once. She can kick anybody's ass, and for this reason, she could breathe through most situations that would be major conflicts for about 99% of other TV characters. And that's why this Kilgrave arc is so unique. Jessica just can't walk up and punch him in the face and kill him. He always has some sort of contingency plan where other people would die if Jessica arrests or kills him. But beyond that, Jessica doesn't even want to kill him, even though the awful things he did to her. She tries to reach him to convince him to use his powers for good. That brief episode arc in season 1, where Jessica and Kilgrave go to that hostage situation, and Kilgrave convinces the man to put down his gun, it's incredibly good. Jessica's aptitude to want to be a good person, even though she's kind of miserable all the time, is really different.
Well, I'm not paying you.
You don't have to.
Oh, because she'll foot the bill?
Yeah. And I'm a Catholic. I have a soft spot for hopeless causes. That was a bad joke, sorry.
Barely.
Is Jessica Jones an antihero? Antiheroes are characters in stories that tend to have less than conventional personalities or traits. People sometimes think antiheroes are like Batman, because he's irritable and he beats people up. But I think Batman is about as far from an antihero as you can get. Punisher, Jax Teller, those are antiheroes. And continuing in the same vein, Jessica Jones is an antihero down to her core. She very clearly is an alcoholic, and breaks the law pretty often. She tends to put her own interests first, sometimes. She hates authority figures, has violent outbursts, and tends to just be flat out rude and abrasive.
Now, I don't give a bag of what you're into.
She is a quintessential anti-hero. A character archetype represents a universal pattern we recognize throughout cinema, media, and literature. All characters usually fall into one of 12 categories. I believe Jessica falls pretty equally into 2 different ones, but it's difficult to decide which one is more prominent. Outlaws are loners that break the law, hate rules, and disrespect authority figures. But heroes are courageous individuals that save the day and confront danger head-on. Jessica definitely shows traits of both of these archetypes, but if I had to choose just one, I'd say Jessica falls more clearly into the hero role. She does have a unique way of tackling problems, but throughout her arc in her own show and The Defenders, she tackles problems head-on. In season 1, instead of running from Kilgrave, a man who mind-controlled her and kept her as a slave for an extended period of time, she decides to stop him. The fear of what he's done to her is outweighed by the damage and death he will bring to others. That, to me, is a quintessential hero. Let's take a brief look at Jessica Jones' motivations. As I've said about 100 times, Jessica Jones is a really complex character, and there's a plethora of reasons behind what drives her decision-making. One of the first things is she's particularly protective of her close friends and family, like Trish Walker and her neighbor Malcolm. The show, she starts off more distant and skeptical about people around her, with the exception of Trish maybe, but she grows closer to others as the show goes on. Jessica's also motivated by seeking justice.
Max, what do you want for dinner?
Justice.
The final part of the character analysis is deciding whether Jessica Jones is a dynamic or static character. Dynamic characters go through changes or transformations throughout the course of their story. Static ones don't. With this information, I think Jessica Jones is a textbook dynamic character, and here's why. She changes from a jaded, troubled private investigator to someone who believes in hope, relationships, and taking responsibility. She confronts her own demons and changes her narrow, cynical view on the world. She goes through radical character development through strong relationships, her own worldview, and trying to overcome her flaws. If you look at Jessica in the first episode and the last, she definitely is a dynamic character. Let's look at Jessica Jones's IQ, or intelligence quotient. IQ is a single number that is meant to represent a person's overall intelligence. such as reasoning and problem-solving ability. And while it has not been strongly correlated to someone's overall success in life, I think it's a decent indicator of how sharp or smart somebody is, and how fast they can learn something new. Just like most other shows, we're never told what Jessica Jones's IQ is. It's clear that she's a highly intelligent and perceptive individual with a very strong wit and street smarts. She's a skilled detective and investigator. She's able to analyze complex situations and connect seemingly unrelated clues with ease. It's safe to say that I think that she's above average, but how much above average? Because this is really just hypothetical, and there's no way to know. I'm going to put her IQ at 112, which is the 79th percentile. This means that she is smarter than 79% of the other people around her. We'll get more into intelligence types later. Now that we know Jessica's IQ, let's hypothesize how she might do on an IQ test called the Wonderlic exam. This is a popular IQ test that tests the examinee's problem-solving and cognitive abilities. You can score 0, or 50, which is perfect. 20 is the average. There's a lot of factors that contribute to how well someone would do on this type of exam. I can't imagine Jessica having the patience to sit down and take a test. But let's just say hypothetically she does this and she actually cares. I think that her score would float around what her IQ percentile is, which we said was 79. With that being said, we can infer that Jessica would score a 27, well above the average score. Let's now look at Jessica's intelligence subgroups. There's 9 of them. Let's rate Jessica on each of the 9, from 1 to 10, and see how she compares to the other characters we've analyzed so far. Spatial intelligence is the concept of being able to perceive and derive insight from visual data. It's the ability to generate, retain, retrieve, and transform well-structured images in your mind. Jessica Jones is a private investigator first and foremost. She's demonstrated proficiency in navigating complex urban environments, and she's shown us she can maneuver environments with ease. Jessica gets a 9. Naturalist intelligence refers to the ability to recognize and understand patterns in nature, including plants, animals, and other naturally happening phenomena. Like a lot of other characters in TV, we don't get a lot of evidence of Jessica's intelligence in this area. But as I said, she has a strong ability to analyze and witness her surroundings. But specifically nature, not really. Jessica gets a 6. Musical intelligence refers to one's ability to discern pitch, tone, rhythm, and be skilled with instruments. Whether it be intentional or unintentional, Jessica doesn't really show much interest in music in the show. And we really don't have any significant references that suggest she has any type of musical ability. It's clear Jessica is gifted in other areas, but not here. Jessica gets a 3. Logical mathematical is the ability to analyze situations or problems and identify solutions. Jessica appears to be really gifted in this area. As a PI, she has a vast experience in problem solving, attention to detail, and drawing conclusions based on actual evidence. She thinks strategically, and she's got a very scientific mindset. Jessica can easily break down complex problems into much more manageable components. She gets a 9. Existential intelligence involves the ability to contemplate deep questions about human existence, such as the meaning of life and death. Jessica does appear to possess some degree of this type of intelligence. She has a good sense of morality, saving lives at all costs, while confronting darker aspects from her past. But at the same time, she does not appear to be very introspective or self-aware. She's rash, acts impulsively, and is controlled by her anger. Jessica gets a 4. Interpersonal intelligence is the ability to interact with others around you. Individuals that have high interpersonal intelligence may be skilled at reading others' emotions, communicating effectively, and resolving conflicts. Jessica interacts with clients as a PI on a daily basis, which means, at least to some degree, she is comfortable with communication. And she also does show empathy and has higher than average emotional intelligence. And while she's more introverted than most, I still think that she is effective at making connections. Jessica gets a 6. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence is a mastery over one's physical abilities and controlling their body movements. I want to make a distinction here. Just because Jessica has super strength and can leap tall buildings with a single bound, doesn't give her an automatic 10 in this category. This type of intelligence focuses more on body control, hand-eye coordination, handling objects masterfully. Boxers, ballet dancers, surgeons, they have really high intelligence. Like Elizabeth Jennings, a spy who spent years perfecting combat. Or even Daredevil, they would both get a 9 or a 10. So let's look at the facts for Jessica. She's obviously stronger than anybody else I'll probably ever review on this channel, so that's a plus. She can easily jump high and possesses excellent dexterity. She's athletic and in great shape, and fights with a variety of different styles. Jessica gets an 8. No, that's still really kind of high, isn't it? Linguistic intelligence refers to an individual's ability to use language effectively. I argue that Jessica shows at least a medium level of linguistic intelligence. She persuades others with her stories, sends emails, and yeah, okay, her vocabulary isn't subpar, but she hasn't mastered language to the degree of a scholar or linguist, or somebody that can speak multiple languages. Jessica gets a 6. The last of the intelligence types, intrapersonal intelligence, is the ability to understand and control one's own emotions. This one's also kind of tricky. She does tend to be self-aware, independent, and show empathy. But as I've said, she's very impulsive. She tends to focus more on outside factors instead of being more introspective. She tends to push people away and not express herself appropriately. Jessica gets a 5. And here is an overall summary. Let's now look at Jessica's personality through the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, also known as the MBTI. The MBTI consists of a series of questions that ask you to choose between different options that describe your behavior. Based on your preferences, the test assigns you to one of 16 personality types. I've addressed the validity of this assessment in the past, as the statistical proof and reliability around this assessment is weak, so you should take the results with a grain of salt. Jessica's personality falls into the ISTP category, known as the virtuoso. Virtuosos are explorers, observers, and curious individuals. They create, troubleshoot, and aren't afraid to take chances and make mistakes. They're friendly, private, focused people, and most virtuosos happen to be men. Other examples of characters that would be ISTPs include Jack Bauer, Michael Weston, and Arya Stark. In the final part of the personality analysis, let's analyze Jessica on a different type of personality scale, the Neo-PIR. The Neo-PIR, or 5-factor model, is a set of 5 broad trait dimensions, often referred to as the Big Five, that help build a personality profile on an individual. These traits are openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism, and agreeableness. Let's look at Jessica on this personality scale and compare her to the other 4 characters. The first trait, openness to experience, is the degree to which someone is imaginative, creative, curious, and open-minded, holding different worldviews, having an imagination, being interested, and experimenting. These are all traits of people that have high openness to experience. Jessica Jones is a complex, introspective character who's not afraid to explore her emotions and the traumatic experiences that shapes who she is. She's open to new perspectives and ideas, and of course is a PI. She welcomes new evidence, theories, and leads. Jessica isn't at the level of characters like House or Jesse, as she's much more grounded. Conscientiousness is the measure of an individual's self-discipline and awareness of how they impact others. Conscientious people stay organized, are great planners, and have excellent willpower. It seems pretty clear to me that Jessica doesn't possess a high level of conscientiousness. She disregards authority and acts impulsively. She doesn't always consider all consequences before she acts, and she is not a planner. She's disorganized, poorly disciplined, and spontaneous. The third trait in the Big Five is extraversion. Extraversion is the measure of how social and engaged in the outside world you are. It should seem pretty clear that Jessica is pretty introverted, but being more than just that, she seems to be a total recluse. She despises dealing with people, even though she runs her own business. She often comes across as disinterested in any type of social event or interaction. She'd rather drink alone and be miserable than go out and party with others. And maybe before the events of the show, she was more extroverted, but given what she's been through, she's withdrawn more and more into her own shell. The fourth factor of the Big Five, agreeableness, is the degree to which someone is cooperative, empathetic, and trusting. I think Jessica falls somewhere in the middle on this one. She can be abrasive and rude and quite dismissive of others, and she's not really friendly. But on the other side of the coin, she understands what it's like to live with trauma and understands that justice should prevail. The fifth and final factor on the Big Five is neuroticism, which manifests as negative emotions. It's the degree to which someone experiences negative emotions like anxiety, moodiness, fear, and sadness. Jessica struggles with PTSD and has a tendency to kind of self-destruct, which would suggest a very high degree of neuroticism. She engages in destructive behavior to mask her trauma and negative emotions and seems to almost be fully consumed at how broken she is. I think of all the characters we've looked at so far, Jessica might be the most unique. I see her being semi-similar to House, someone who doesn't know themselves that well. They make dumb mistakes and self-destruct their own life. House does it more because he's just a complete idiot.
You're a goof.
Takes one to know one, loser.
But Jessica does it because she's been dealing with horrible trauma her whole life. And despite it all, she's about 100 times stronger than House, both inside and out. Now that we've got the entire personality and character analysis out of the way, let's analyze Jessica on our predetermined metrics. Just like our previous characters, we're going to rank Jessica on 6 differently weighted metrics and give her a score on each one, from 1 to 10. Not only will we be able to compare how Jessica does in each category and compare it to others, but we'll get a single final score to see if she is the best. 6 dimensions, 3 categories. Let's jump into the first normal weighted one, awards. To score high in this metric, we want to look at how the actor or actress representing the character was recognized by award bodies, whether it be wins or nominations. Either will help you score higher here. Unfortunately, Kristen didn't win any awards for her portrayal of Jessica Jones. She only procured a few nominations, such as a Critics' Choice Television Award and a Webby, but she's under-recognized. By no means is this fully indicative of her performance, but awards on paper? Nothing at all. Let's now look at the first double-weighted category, performance. How great of an acting performance did Kristen give in the show? The short answer, at least in my humble opinion, is phenomenal. Kristen truly embodies the character of Jessica Jones down to her core. She's strong, brave, heroic, but also withdrawn and troubled. She conveys this blend of emotions in a way that gives her a real unique feeling. She's physical, versatile, and has incredible chemistry with her other co-stars. I read a critic review that said she owns every moment she's on screen. She has a commanding presence while still somehow feeling so relatable, all the while showcasing incredible emotional range. She's Jessica Jones, and, at least to me, she'll always be known for it. The first half-weight category is the carry factor. Simply put, how much does Jessica carry the show? Well, for obvious starters, the show is named after her.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Her past, her powers, her conflicts. There is no show without her. A show like Scrubs, yes, there could be a show without Turk. A much worse show, but it would still exist. Kristen absolutely is the anchor of this universe. Let's now look at the second normal weight category, show presence, which is just a fancy term to determine how popular and high quality a show is. How much of an imprint does Jessica Jones leave on the television world, and even the MCU? I mentioned previously, but I don't think many would argue that Jessica Jones isn't the strongest MCU show. It's great, but I think it pales in comparison to shows like WandaVision, Loki, and Daredevil. Jessica Jones doesn't have the largest fan base, and its cultural imprint wasn't as big as other shows. I've said it before, it is the first MCU female-led project. It gave 3 solid seasons on TV, with most favoring the first. But this show's theme and performance outweigh its place in our TV library. The second half-weight category, uniqueness, is, well, simply put, how unique is Jessica? And without mentioning, for the 49th time, her past and her PTSD, Jessica has a lot of psychological depth and relatability. Not to mention her noir-style narrative, also not typical in most TV shows. But Jessica also shares a lot of traits with about 1,000 other characters. Her being a grumpy anti-hero, having super strength and other common superhero powers. And of course, the amnesia about my past trope. She's compelling and quite rare, not as much as other greats. Let's close with the second double-weighted and final metric we're going to review, writing quality. What does this mean? And we could talk about the show, and how great the style of the show is, but I really want to focus on just the character of Jessica, how she grows, what she goes through, the narratives they set up for her. I think all in all, the writers did a fantastic job with her. She grows from season 1 to season 3, and I think there's a type of realism that permeates all the decisions that she makes. The reception of the show and the supporting characters don't really do the show a lot of justice, but I think if we're really focusing on just Jessica and who she is and what she goes through, the writers gave her a lot to do. So Jessica gets a 45.5, or a D. Honestly, this isn't as bad as I thought. And now that we check the leaderboard, Jessica comes second to last, ahead of Turk, but behind House and Elizabeth. Jessie is still holding our top spot.
Yeah, bitch!
Jessica surprised me, because when I think of the show, I don't necessarily think of it as a great work of art. I personally love noir-type movies and shows, and this MCU installment brings this type of atmosphere to life with a unique twist. I love Kristen Ritter's portrayal of Jessica Jones, and have always been attracted to the complexity, the nuanced performance of her. It's engaging and satisfying to watch actors portray these broken characters, because, as I've said before, all of us feel broken in a way. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have watched Jessica Jones that have struggled with trauma and addiction. To see a character with so much baggage and be so flawed, still overcome such awful atrocities and struggles, must be an empowering feeling. Jessica is never at any point defined by what's happened to her, but by her strength and resilience to overcome the worst odds. She faces her past head on, and instead of punching her way through conflicts, which, let's be real, is the easiest option, she uses her patience, her intelligence, her skills to outsmart her foes, to even, in the darkest times, maybe, give people a second chance, even when they wholeheartedly don't deserve it. Jessica Jones is way more than just a random MCU superhero show. It's a powerful story that highlights resilience and overcoming adversity. It highlights the human spirit. Jessica Jones is a stark reminder that in even the darkest times, hope will always shine through. I mentioned it previously, but instead of releasing a 6th character analysis next, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap video on the 5 that we've already covered. I'm going to break the video down into a couple separate parts. Talk about why I'm doing this series. Talk about psychological measurement, which is what I've really been doing a lot of. And do some comparative analysis and fun little exercises with the 5 characters we've chosen. I'll give a hint of the next couple characters we're going to do next, and maybe another video series I might do in the future. Watch for my next video drop soon. It will not be very long. Thank you again, everybody. I'll see you all soon.